I know what I lost, what he took from me.
Don't touch her!
I just want to know, was it worth it? Oswald Cobb, man of the people.
He believes in the fact that Oz is more than just a guy that's selling drugs, you know, it's more than that. And he says that as much in the other episode as well. And so it's, I think that just makes that ultimate turn all the more tragic, because I think he genuinely does have a love for Oz and a love for these people. And I think him and Francis grow in a way that he and Oz don't really get to. And so I think even Francis kind of has a real, genuine care for Victor as well, that, and he ends up, you know, not doing right by either of them. I guess that's sort of maybe my ultimate view on it, is Oz is a very for self kind of guy, and what helps him, you know? And I think that there's times where giving a little monologue like that will help him, and there's times where the opposite one would help him too, and he'd give it just as passionately, the second one also, you know? I think he believes in the underdog one. I think he has a genuine belief in it. Will he abide by it if it means that it's gonna hurt him? I don't think so. Is he worth someone? Is he worth rooting for? I guess everyone should make up their own mind, right? But if you're asking me what my opinion on it, yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's pretty diabolical what he does, and the way he ends the scene with what's going on with his mother, and then when the way he ends it with Eve, even, it's like, now you're making her do these things, and it's all dirty and mucky and grimy and brutal. So, would I be rooting for him going forward? I don't think so. But maybe I'm biased. Maybe I'm just spiteful because he killed me. I don't know.
It's pretty dark stuff. I couldn't believe it when Lauren shared with me, and it took about half an hour. I was on the west coast of Ireland doing the Banshees of Inisherin, and I had a Zoom with her and Matt Reeves and Dylan Clark, our producer, and she took about half an hour to describe what the whole season was going to be. My jaw was on the ground. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what she was creating.
I couldn't believe when I saw Eve dressed up like your mom and dancing at the end. I was like, this is some really crazy stuff.
I was like, did HBO read this shit? I mean, do they know did they sign it? We got the green light. Yeah, it's really bold stuff. It's really bold, and yet in the world of psychopathy that Oz finally lands in, I mean, and I think absolute mental fracture, which becomes its own version of a whole. I think it's all justifiable in that twisted world. Like, it all makes sense. None of it feels like it's just created by Lauren for reasons of titillation or, you know, yeah, it all felt strangely, darkly justified. You know, it all made sense in that world and from Oz's perspective. I mean, he's a dark dude by the end of the show. He's pretty dark at the start of it as well, but by the end, oof.
It is a really heart-wrenching scene, and it was hard to write and hard to shoot, and like watching Colin and Renzi perform it was just something else. But it did feel essential. It felt really essential to Victor and to who Oz is. So I always knew that was what was going to happen, and tried to, you know, build the arc accordingly and have you deeply understand a kid like this who, you know, what is so appealing about Oz to a kid like Victor is also maybe what is so appealing to Oz as an audience. You know, he's charming, he's interesting, and brings you into a very big world, and he doesn't, you know, play by other people's rules. And a lot of what Oz says is real. It's true. It's very relatable and honest. The way he sees this distorted American dream is very accurate, unfortunately, to a lot of the world that we're kind of in right now. So I think that's what makes him scary, ultimately, is this idea that what he says to Victor, in some regards, is quite true. And Victor loving Oz and caring for him and seeing him at his most vulnerable is to Oz what makes him necessary to dispose of. So in that regard, it's a very complicated, tragic dynamic, especially because, as you point out, Victor is one of our purer characters. He comes from a loving family. He has a good relationship with them. He loses them in this tragic circumstances, and he's lost. And then here comes Oz in this strangest meet cute you've ever seen, and he finds himself like embroiled in his world. So you know, that was the goal, and to know that this show in a lot of ways is a tragedy. And so it seemed like an inevitable fate, but my hope is that you were surprised, and that yet after Oz does that, because he does not have to, he chooses to do that, you know, you're taken aback and, you know, potentially a bit disgusted with him.
That night on the set, honestly, because that was towards the end of the shoot, because we shot in order the episodes, and the mood on the set. Do you remember you were there that night? The mood on the set was terrible. It was nobody, like, and I mean the crew everyone was invested in the story. We'd all been together, 300-400 of us for a year at that point. We'd shot for 3 months, then we had the writer's strike for 6, then we went back and shot for another 3.5 or so. When that scene came up to shoot by the water's edge that night, it was just like, oh God. I still had that night, my sister saying to me, does he really have to kill Vic? I was like, oh, I'm afraid so.
I would just like love to see them fuck shit up. You know, I think that would be so cool. I just think it would be cool to see like these two, you know, villainesses or whatever you want to call them, just really go for it, you know? Yeah, I would love that.
What's great about the end bit, the letter that you reference, is more emotionally received by the character, that she's lost, she's not had family since her father did the horrible thing he did to her, that's the worst betrayal a father could do to a daughter. But this idea that she's in this horrible place, but that a letter comes from nowhere by a half sister and says, hey, you're not alone. Seeing Kristen play that emotionally, that to us was the satisfying ending to that character. As you said, she's a villain at that point, but she's also been wronged. And so emotionally, to receive something like that from a known character, a character from our world, it really was about servicing the emotional journey for Kristen and Sofia's character.
What was important to us is that that we'd be playing out things that are earned, and that has to do with the emotional life of these characters, right? So as Dylan says, that ending was not like, it was much more about what it meant to her to know that she had family after she'd been so betrayed by her family, and after she'd literally, now we can say this because you're saying this won't be a spoiler, but after she'd killed her family. So she's not alone. And so it was more the idea of like, oh wow, there's this other person who, by the way, is connected to me through blood, but then means that there's some aspect of their experience that's connected to my experience, and that she wasn't alone. That was more exciting to us than the idea of like, yeah, and that means boom, the next thing that's going to happen is X. And I would say that the movie, as it relates, you know, like when you talk about where things end for Oz, we were trying to calibrate it in such a way that the events do lead into the movie, but not in some like, you know, we didn't want to do, I think one of the things that feels, to me, it's not my favorite kind of entertainment where you're leaving somebody with a cliffhanger and it's like, you're going to have to see this to understand that. I don't think we wanted these to be complete experiences. And so I think it's actually one of the reasons why, you know, when we started talking about one of the easiest places to have brought Rob in to be Batman would have been the ending, but it would have been one of these things where you're almost flicking the audience to go like, yeah, now you got to watch the Batman. And we're not, these are meant to be complete narrative and emotional and entertainment experiences in and of themselves. So we don't want to be flicking and teasing the audience to say, yeah, you're going to have to tune in for that, which is not to say that the seeds aren't there for more. That's delicious. But the import of it had to be something more than that. If you engage in all of these stories, you feel like you go on this massive journey, which I think for us is about switching point of view. It's about empathy. It's like going, okay, you saw that experience. Now you can see how that experience, as Dylan said, affects these people in this neighborhood where they didn't have it as good as Bruce Wayne has it. He's got his own struggles, and you just keep shifting point of view so that you keep finding empathy, understanding, and some kind of like awakening or character enlightenment for those characters. But it's not meant to sort of like just keep sort of churning the machine of like, here's a tease, now you better turn into the next thing. We're not trying to do that. We're not trying to give you, make people, we want them to be addicted to the show in the right way, not trying to drive them crazy to go like, oh shoot, you left us and now I have to, we want them to want to go and engage into the next.
We want them to want more series from us because there's all these great marquee characters that we feel like deserve their own long form expression. And if we're lucky, we'll get to do that.